IVM.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawalla, a life coach, a business mentor, and a motivational speaker. I tackle the challenges that come with varied work cultures, and I try to give out some cheat codes for loving your job in the second season of the Empowering series with me, Zarina. This show will feature live sessions with me and a participant, most likely to be an entrepreneur, a startup founder, an employee, a recruiter, or just about anyone who strives to love their job and looks forward to bringing in a positive shift at their workplace. On today's episode, we have the brilliant Natasha Malpani Oswal. She is a creative producer and a splendid storyteller. In fact, she also has authored her own book, Boundless. And apparently now she's also a co-host because Boundless is a podcast. So hello, Natasha.
Thank you for that introduction.
Yeah, I like to make the introduction nice and interesting so that listeners already know what they're getting. So, basically, Natasha, you've had such a noteworthy journey, and through this whole host of expeditions you've gone through, I believe you've lived abroad for about a decade.
Years.
Yeah. And then you came back to the country. You've been doing some wonderful work. You've been an investor, worked with startups, media, production. Oh my God, the list goes on, huh?
Yeah.
And then we're co-hosts, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
How's this entire journey been for you?
Yeah, it's actually been really fun. You know, I started out as an immunologist.
Oh, wow.
So I did cancer research for a bit. And I know it sounds really sexy, but it was so boring. So it's really fun after having worked in a very boring field to actually get to do something so fun, you know, full time. So,
and how did this whole fun happen to you? I mean, just from doing so-called assumption of something sexy and turned out to be boring, but then you went on to writing.
Yeah.
And again, I believe, and I have read a little bit about you, so you did start writing at a young age,
Yes.
although you put it out and platformed it much later, right?
yes.
What about
exactly.
that?
Yeah, so, you know, I've moved from science to investing to media now, right? So it seems like a crazy journey, but exactly like you said, I've always been writing.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's really funny. Like, I wrote my first biography.
A biography?
Yeah, like in commas when I was 4.
Really?
It's a very short one.
I can imagine. How many pages is that?
It was actually, I think I dragged it on to 10 pages.
You
and it also had
actually wrote
illustrations.
But it's a proper biography?
Yeah.
I would love to have had that, you know, and use that as an excerpt in
Yeah.
this conversation.
I wish. I mean, I should actually share it. I should share it. It's really funny, and I've like illustrated it with glitter and everything.
How sweet.
And then my first startups, I've also been working on startups for a while. My first startup was actually at the age of 9. I started a library.
Oh, you
Which again, you know, is a terrible startup idea. It has a failing business model. But it was surprisingly successful. My school actually had to shut it down because I was making money from other kids.
You were?
So
The school stopped making money on all those late books. You started making money on that. Okay.
So writing has always been a passion, you know. I've always been a storyteller.
All right.
But I also feel like as a child, I was sort of a perfectionist. So I was always looking for permission in some way. So it was only when I did my MBA at Stanford a few years ago that I really asked myself, you know, what is it that I want to do? Not what does it make sense to do?
Yes.
And the one question that they ask us in business school when they're doing this life coaching is, you know, what is it that you like doing in your free time? Or what did you do as a child? And it
Right.
was so obvious for me, you know, like when I saw my other classmates struggle, I was like, this is like, it came to me instantly that of course what I've always liked is reading, writing, telling stories. So then I thought, you know, why not be a full-time storyteller?
That's
That's
wonderful.
the transition.
That's
yeah.
wonderful. I mean, storytelling and making that or pursuing that as a passionate career is something else.
Yeah.
We've always heard stories all our lives.
Yeah.
We've been hearing narratives from family, friends, and you know, when we're little, the grandmoms and the granddads, they're usually the storytellers for us.
Yeah,
But to
exactly.
make that a successful career and a productive one, impactful one, that's something else altogether, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And, I'm not saying that I've done it. I'm trying to do it, right? Like,
but you're on that road.
Yeah, this is like a 30, 40-year path. I'm seeing it as a long-term move. But, I know you're a coach, and I just wanted to emphasize the importance of coaching, right?
Oh, yes.
Right there, because if someone external who didn't know me well hadn't asked those two questions, I wouldn't be here today.
It's so important because you're right. Coaching really helps you to broaden your horizon, to think with another perspective. Yeah. And sometimes people hesitate. They think going to a coach or a therapist or counselor means something's wrong with you and you don't have your life sorted. Yeah. But it's okay if you don't have your life sorted and you need a little rewiring.
No one does.
It's not a big deal. So that's great. So you have gone through the process of coaching yourself. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in coaching, and I don't even think, it's something you do when things are not working. I think, in fact, when things are working is when you need it the most, right?
Oh, yes.
Because if you are really busy, you are being productive, you're managing teams, you have multiple projects happening, which is obviously what we all want, right?
Right.
Like, we want to be busy. That's exactly when I think you need a coach to help you reflect.
True.
To take a step back, to say, hey, make time for yourself. And so I really think that, going to a coach regularly every few weeks, if you can, is worth it. And I think, in fact, instead of saying, I don't have the time, when you're the most busy is when you should go to this coach.
Yes, because when you're in your regular life, this is something I, in fact, tell my clients, so you're pretty much bang on, I usually tell my clients this, that if you're busy, and you say, Zarina, I have been really, I'm in the well, I'm under the rock, and I've got too much work on hand, and I can't do, I can't remove time for this. Yeah. That's the time when you need it the most.
Exactly.
So if you don't make it part of your lifestyle,
absolutely,
and it's not even about seeing the coach, it's about changing your mindset. So conditioning your mind. If you don't make that part of your lifestyle, then coaching is not going to help you for too long.
Exactly. And I think, that's again the thing about storytelling that I really, really like, right? Like, I think you need a level of self-awareness.
Right.
And two, you need to really be able to observe other people, because stories are basically, whether they're fiction or not, right? Whether it's poetry or whether it's a TV show, it's basically all really good stories have an element of truth in them.
That's true.
Right? Like, basically people connect to some truth, and then once you've been able to say something honestly, you can add the drama or the entertainment or the layers in whatever format you want, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think that's another really important thing that coaching can help with, especially if you're a storyteller. It helps you see yourself and other people more clearly.
Right. Now that you've just mentioned the book, and storytelling, the book that you've written, Boundless, it's deep and it's sensitive, and yet it's very subtly penned, if I may say so. How did you come up with the idea of just making sure that you platform something like that? Because I think you've put out your raw poems, right,
exactly.
in that book. Yeah. So it's not the most filtered, edited, and looked into version.
No.
It's kind of a draft of all your thoughts.
It's literally that. It's exactly that. So it's on purpose.
Right.
That it's not been packaged. It's actually very raw poems that hopefully will connect with you because you hear that truth in them, right? And so that's the thing. So I wasn't actually planning to publish Boundless as a poetry book.
Oh, you weren't?
I wasn't. Okay. So I was abroad for 10 years. I'd made all these transitions that we were talking about. I was moving back to India last summer, and I was actually really scared to move back. So I was like, I've changed so much as a person that it doesn't feel like me coming home. Okay. It feels like I'm adjusting to a whole new world again. And I was scared about the transition. And so I literally started writing the poems to myself. So the poems are my personal diary that I wrote on my notes app on my phone.
No way.
Yeah, like
really?
Not even on a laptop. Yeah, it's my
Do people
thoughts.
know this? This is quite interesting for listeners, and especially people who are reading the book.
Yeah, so it's which is I think why there's so much vulnerability in them, right? It's like me expressing myself, like my journey of love, heartbreak, exploring family, the search for identity. And then, I basically started sharing the poems on Instagram.
That's where this...
Yeah, and they
entire
did
journey
really well.
started.
Exactly. They did really well on social media. Because, honestly, when you are the storyteller, it's
Yeah.
really hard for you to have objectivity, right?
It is.
In terms of how good or bad your work is. And then I got such a good response that I decided to publish the book. Because, people used to write to me saying, oh, your poems made me cry, or they made me bolder, they gave me courage. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. So the whole message of the book, which, I couldn't see clearly while I was writing it, but is very clear now, is
Wow.
that it's basically, the book is my search for my identity and voice.
Right.
And the whole message of the book is that, you or anyone can make their own path. So take the time to find your own voice,
Right.
because you can design your life.
That's something that I find extremely interesting. Now that you've mentioned it, I'd like to dwell upon this conversation. Designing your own life, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, and it's something that I think about now a lot, right? And this is exactly what I didn't see as a kid, and I wish I'd heard of this concept or thought of this concept 10 or 15 years ago.
Right.
So like I was saying, I was a very straight-jacketed little kid, really focused on getting that A+ or A star, being first in school, pleasing parents and teachers. So I always thought I was on some track, and I never thought that actually this is my life.
Right.
I need to ask myself what I want. I was only doing what other people wanted. And then when I went abroad for the first time, I was studying, like I was saying, I was doing cancer research. I really hated it. And I was like, what am I doing here?
Okay.
I realized that I'd really never asked myself what I want to do in terms of my career. And so as part of that reflection, I moved to impact investing, which was my first huge leap.
Okay.
But while making the move to impact investing, everyone told me, you're crazy. No one's going to let you transition from science to finance. You're not even in your home country. You're Indian. You're in London. You don't have a visa.
Right.
Why would anyone give you this job? Why would anyone let you make the leap, right?
Right.
And then the second I made the move, people stopped questioning it, and they were like, yeah, it's so obvious, it makes sense. And so I realized that, people only question whether you can or cannot do something until you do it.
True.
The second you do it, then people take it for granted, right? That, yeah, of course, it's possible because you showed us.
Right.
So
That's true.
Yeah. So I think the whole point is I realized that, you can't really wait for permission. You just have to experiment. The only way you're going to find what you want, what you like, who you want to be, what you want to do is you just have to try things. There really is, no secret.
That's true. But, I was just talking to this group of students recently.
Yeah.
And I was doing a master class at some place. And I was talking to this group of students.
Yeah.
And my question to them was, what is your value?
Yeah.
Okay. We were talking about confidence and self-belief and, worth, all of that. But before that, my question to them was, what is your value?
Yeah.
And most of them didn't have an answer to that. So, what you're talking about is very relatable. People actually need to understand these things. That question shook my class and they were like, we haven't even thought about this. And then I said, okay, what is it that you want to do with your life?
Yeah.
If this is too tough, let's talk about what you want to do.
Yeah.
And just like you mentioned, Natasha, everyone is going through this phase of just pleasing people.
Exactly.
And the newer kids,
Yeah.
the poor things, they're under so much pressure.
Exactly.
One of them turned around and she mentioned to me in class that, ma'am, I said, why are you not able to see what you want to do with your life? I don't mean you've got to become a doctor, a lawyer or scientist, but in general, something you
What do
like.
you like?
That's it. It's just something you like. And her response was a little hard hitting for me because she turned around and she said, the thing is, we're not supposed to go wrong. We're supposed to make sure that we do everything correctly. Our parents expect that from us.
Exactly.
Our teachers expect that from us. Our boyfriends, girlfriends
Yeah.
expect that. So we don't
Yeah.
have the scope
Yeah.
or the courage to try anything anymore.
Yeah.
And that was a little disheartening.
Yeah. And that's literally that's a big message again, of both the book and now my podcast.
Right.
It's literally,
Right.
there's a poem called Coloring Outside the Lines. There's a whole episode.
Wow.
Which says that it's so damaging, especially as a society in India, that we focus on academic excellence and
Yes.
getting good grades, because life is not like an exam. There are no right answers.
Absolutely.
Right? And I actually think it's better, honestly, life, if anything, or companies are more like sports teams. It's better to learn to play a sport, work in a team, sometimes lose, sometimes win. That teaches you more
Right.
than getting perfect grades. And I am talking as someone who really was a nerd and did really well in school. Looking back, I'm like, that really didn't help me. What actually helped me was just taking the time to experiment and try new things and obviously make mistakes. And that's exactly what happens, right? In fact, it took me a lot longer, and it was much harder for me to make mistakes because I was so used to being perfect academically. And the more you're scared of getting that B or coming second,
right,
the harder life becomes.
It does. Since you mentioned perfection, let's talk about perfection a little bit. How do you still find yourself trying to strive for perfection, or are you better off with just accepting who you are, probably improving, of course.
Yeah.
But are you more in that perfection zone?
Yeah, I honestly, I oscillate a lot. Sometimes I definitely am a huge believer in this design your own life, find your own voice. So I've become much better at experimenting, try new things, like making the space, saying no to people, just doing what I want to do. I definitely do that. But there's also a part of me, I've been so conditioned, right? Especially as I think an Indian woman.
Yeah.
To, in some ways, please other people, that I definitely find myself, trying to look good, dress a certain way, be a certain type of wife, daughter-in-law, daughter, because my only role is not work.
Correct.
So I sort of go back and forth, but more often than not, I definitely want to be the former, right? I think we have to be bold.
We do.
Yeah, you can't be... and what is the point of being perfect? It doesn't actually get you anything.
My idea of perfection is very different. I just don't see perfection as an option for human beings. Yeah. Because that's exactly why we are human.
Yeah.
You're not in the capacity of... You're not polarizing yourself as angelic or satanic because you are human. You are going to make mistakes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And it's okay to accept that.
Yeah.
The point is to be able to acknowledge a mistake, probably learn from it, and then move on.
Yeah.
But the fact that you don't want to make a mistake is basically that you will never try anything new with your life.
Exactly. That's
just the fact.
That's so important, right? I think you should... this is the main thing that I struggled with. In my early 20s is just saying it is okay.
Oh, yes.
To make mistakes and to disappoint people. Because honestly, again, when I was young, even when, not just in school, even in my personal life, even with my friends, I used to think, what is the right thing to say? Now,
that is so important, right? How do you deal with that?
That's not how you make friends.
Of course not.
That's because people can sense, I think people really like authenticity, right? I think, again, that's a big topic of my book and the podcast. I think you make role relationships or role friendships when you are vulnerable. And in fact, you connect with people more when you show that you're struggling. So it is completely fine to say things are not working, right? So this whole... And also, like we said, right, what perfection means is so different to different people.
True.
Now, there's no such thing for me as making a perfect show.
Right.
It doesn't exist. What is a perfect show or a perfect book? It just, all you can say is, hey, are you connecting with people?
Exactly.
Are you making them feel something? And that's all.
Right. As long as you can transfer your energies or the vibe or the positivity that you carry within you.
Exactly.
And inspire others.
Exactly.
I believe you are perfect in your own way.
Yeah.
Just the concept, it's very sad because like you mentioned, you do care about the way you appear, the way you carry yourself, the way you dress, and all of that is important.
Yeah.
But with the kind of standards, the beauty standards we have around us these days, the way kids are getting lured, forget kids, even women in their 40s and 30s and 50s, everyone, men, getting lured with the idea of looking good, looking a certain way.
Yeah.
And the whole concept is so stereotyped with perfection.
Yeah.
Perfect body, perfect skin, perfect hair.
Yeah.
Come on. It's not going to happen.
That's what I think we're all, not just, kids these days, we're all just putting a lot of pressure on ourselves.
We are.
And I think the second you just let go and say, hey, all I want to do is do good work and connect with some people, I think that really simplifies your life.
It does. Now that you mentioned doing good work, connecting with people, how do you describe yourself when you come to doing something like that?
Yeah, I think for me now, because now I'm a creator, right? I'm basically making content across different formats, audio, video, text. To me, doing a good job really is just telling a great story that makes someone feel something.
Okay.
That's it. That's the one metric.
Right.
Tell great stories and make people feel a certain way. And then I think the connection comes from that, right? Because every great story has honesty, like we talked about, and every great story is you connect with something in the story. So connection is actually part of my job.
Okay.
You know, if I'm not connecting with my audience or the people reading my poetry or like listening to the podcast, then I haven't done a good job.
Right.
Yeah.
So you like the whole idea of connecting.
Yeah.
And that it also describes you as a person.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, again, like storytelling is a conversation, right?
It is.
Yeah. So,
And a beautiful one, because even today, even as a coach, I use a lot of stories.
Yeah.
I prefer to use stories than tools and techniques on paper.
Yeah.
Because those tools and techniques will be in your closet, and the next time I see one Chana Singh wala, I will see it in their hand.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
and these days, you know, if it's on your laptop in an email also, you're not going to open it very often and check frequently.
Yeah, but you'll remember the story.
But you'll remember a story. You'll remember a story. When if I'm just going to tell you, do you remember that story I told you? Client will be like, yeah, I remember that one. But if I say, do you remember that matrix I showed you? They'll be like, which one?
Exactly.
So it does matter. Stories are one of the most effective ways of connecting and getting through to people, right?
Yeah.
That's so nice. But Boundless, it's this book of raw stories. So is there an excerpt or maybe a synopsis or a stanza from the book which really defines your personality?
Oh, my personality. Interesting.
Yes.
You know, I'll read one.
Okay.
I'll read one poem, which I think is basically, you know, we were talking about like one of those insights that I had.
Right.
About designing my own life. Mm-hmm. So I'll read one which is literally talks about that insight that I had that helped me break free and sort of say, what is my own voice and identity?
Do tell.
And then I read one poem which is again about this conversation we're having about the importance of experimenting and making mistakes.
Excellent.
Yeah?
Come
cool.
on.
Okay. So the first poem is called Homecoming. Don't tell me what to do. You made me. I am not you. You raised us. You are not my home now. Your fears once rang in my ears. They are not mine. Let me go. So that was the first poem. Mm-hmm. And then the second poem about the importance of making mistakes is called An Education.
Okay. An education.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I did what I was told. Got good at coloring within the lines. Having the right answer. Pleasing teachers. I coasted. Relying on my memory. But I wasn't ready. I couldn't handle myself. Or my heart. Or read others' minds. Break some rules while you're in school. Learn to fall. And bounce back from mistakes. There's no reward for learning to color within the lines.
Beautiful.
So,
I mean, like I mentioned, it's deep, intense, yet so subtle.
Yeah,
Wow.
and you know, exactly, like I wanted to write very simple poetry. Like, I think that's the other thing with storytelling, you know, like it just needs to be very simple because that simplicity is hard-hitting.
It is. But these were some really hair-raising words. And I guess everybody can relate to them.
Yeah.
Because we've all gone through this pressure of performance in school, pressure of performance, or social pressure, peer pressure, people around us, how they perceive us, how we perceive them.
Exactly.
And something like this actually is an eye-opener.
Thank you.
I'm a bit speechless, which doesn't usually happen on my show. I am never really speechless. I have to keep talking. But this moment is slightly defining. So yes, I'm going to probably have to, buy the book and read the whole thing.
Please do.
I will. And maybe use a couple of these with no plagiarism, but I will use them with your reference.
I would love that. Please do share the poems.
I will. On that note, let's just take a short break. Like I mentioned, I'm speechless. Let me recoup and come back, right? So see you on the other side.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please make sure you do. And why aren't you following us? I've been asking you for almost a year now to follow us. Please do follow us. One of the things that I do ask you guys to do every so often is if you hear something you like, take a screenshot, tag us on social media. As I mentioned, we're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So this week our Tamil podcast Ponnai Selvan is going to complete 100 episodes this Wednesday. Make sure you tune in for that. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by Roshan Netalkar. Cyrus and Roshan discuss the eco-friendly music concert that Roshan is putting together. Also check out last week's Cock and Bull. Raj Kaushal, an old friend of mine, was on that episode and we had a really interesting conversation that spanned all kinds of different subjects. On Advertising is Dead, Varun Dagirala is joined by an old friend and head of agency partnerships and creative services at Google India, Aditya Swami. They talk about the evolving marketer in today's time. On Football Should Ball, hosts Gaurav, Karthik and Siva round up the weekend's fixtures, most notably Liverpool versus Tottenham. On Golgappa with Trupti Khamkar, Trupti is joined by Mandar Bhide, a stand-up comic who talks to her about the business of content and some fun experiences doing shows. Speaking of shows, on Mr. and Mrs. Binge Watch, Janice and Anirudh talk about HBO's new teen drama series Euphoria. And on the Geek Fruit podcast, we have a treat for the Breaking Bad fans. Join hosts Jishnu and Tejas as they discuss El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. Simplified is back again with part 4 of their 150th episode. In this episode, they talk about the implications of Brexit and the transformation of Dubai. Speaking of other countries, on Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav talks about his trip to Turkey with his friends and how you can curate your travel to make them the most fun and memorable experiences. On The Origin of Things, Chuck narrates an interesting story about a Brazilian company that struggled its way through World War II and the Great Depression. On IVM Likes, IVM staffers Jude, Ritika and Madhuri talk about pop culture that moved them and made them more empathetic as people. They also recommend some really cool things that you can check out. And with that, let's get you on with your show.
Welcome back to the Empowering series with me, Zarina, and I'm still in conversation with Natasha Malpani Oswal. So, Natasha, welcome back. And we just left the conversation on a very, like I said, speechless note for me. Impeccable poems and what a way of expressing your emotions. Just loved it. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Since you've mentioned all the things in terms of the way you write, your thought process, we talked about your transition, we talked about how you got to doing Boundless and platforming your own little personal diary into a book, which touched people's hearts. How did all of this come by? Did you use a lot of self-reflection or was there a moment of self-awareness or was there this eureka light bulb moment in your life where you decided, hey, I don't want to be this, I want to be this?
Yeah, I think, I've had a few of those moments. I think that, like you just asked, I think we don't talk enough about self-awareness.
Oh, yes, we don't.
Because, I think it's really important to take the time to just reflect on not just what you're thinking, but what you're feeling.
Right.
From time to time. Right. And like I was saying, I've really become a big believer now in just taking the time to think, reflect, write to myself. Right. That's literally how the book Boundless came about, because I was writing to myself.
Sure.
It was my personal diary. And the reason I'm such a big believer is I think it was because I didn't do enough of it when I was younger, right? I said I just sort of floated through life for 20 years, asking other people what I should do. And then when I was transitioning from immunology to impact investing, when I made that first transition, I realized exactly like this poem Homecoming says, that, I had other people's voices in my head and I was like, what's my voice? Right. And I think it takes time. Like, it takes time for you to look inside and hear your own voice, because we have so many other people's voices in our heads, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think that's what self-awareness actually, I think, means to me, is just, one, taking the time to be really honest with what you're thinking and feeling from time to time. And then if you really have, the guts, expressing that.
Yeah, you need the
in
courage.
An honest way, yeah.
True.
Yeah, because it takes courage to say what's genuinely on your mind.
Yes, it does.
And I think now, especially that I'm, building and managing teams and, running various projects, self-awareness is more and more important, right? Because you can't really manage other people if you can't manage yourself.
True.
And so that's actually something that the business school I went to in the Stanford MBA program really emphasizes, is take the time to develop emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Because, IQ, honestly, it doesn't take you that far. Just like we were saying with academic excellence.
Right.
It's not that helpful getting perfect A's, because life really doesn't mirror an exam.
Oh, it doesn't.
In any way. And I think it's the same. Like, of course, you need to be a little bit smart, to do well. But I think it's much more important for you to be able to handle yourself and other people.
So true.
to do well.
So true. Now that you mentioned this emotional intelligence bit, right? Daniel Goleman is one of the pioneers in emotional intelligence, and he's been a bestseller. And he, in fact, bases his entire study on the 5 components important for emotional intelligence. And the top of the chart is self-awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
It starts with self-awareness.
Exactly.
All about knowing who you are. When you're telling somebody, even parents these days, not these days, for all our lives and generations, you see parents, they tell their children what to do, what not to do. I get that. You need to do that. You need to give them a slight discipline, give them some regulation so they know how to go about and what their parameters are.
Yeah.
However, how are you so sure about this is right and this is wrong?
Yeah.
And 2 things that I truly believe when it comes to doing something or being courageous or using that defining moment in your personal life to stand out like you did, right? Or listening to your own voice. An important part is to make sure to ask the question why. When somebody is asking you to do something, ask them why.
Yeah.
And the second part is to have the courage to listen to the answer and still do what you want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that why is very important. Parents say believe in this religion. Why? Because you believe in it. Parents say don't do this. Why? Parents will say respect elders. Why? How about mutual respect? How about parents teaching children that, hey, you know what? Believe in humanity. Believe in mutual respect. Believe in being good people. That's what we want you to do. And how do you not have answers for those whys?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So I'm not just talking about parents. When you're working in an organization, you're expected to do certain things.
Yeah.
The question to be asked when you are looking for self-awareness or introspection is answering the whys that people have put across to you. And when you get the answer, if the answer doesn't suit you, then have the courage to accept that and do something about it.
Yeah.
That really helps your level of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I love that. And that's literally like, that was a big insight that I wasn't asking why enough.
There you go.
I was thinking that, other people had the answer, but they don't. We're all making things up, right?
Right.
So I think exactly like you said, if you ask enough whys, you realize that the answers stop.
Right.
And then you have to decide what's right and wrong for you.
Exactly. And I'm not even saying ask yourself why.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself all the W's, the H, and all of that. But when somebody is asking you or telling you, rather, you cannot do this.
Yeah.
Like you said, there were a lot of people who said, you cannot do this with your life. Question is why? Why do you think so?
Yeah.
And when I don't want to believe you, then I'm going to have the courage to prove it. Not to you, but to myself, that no, this is something I can do. And self-awareness comes from a great part of being able to do that. People don't want to do that. Your comfort is in being caged.
Yeah.
We always say we want liberty, we want freedom, we want to fly, but we like our wings to be clipped. We like people telling us what to do because then we have somebody to blame.
I was just going to say, I think it really is. The flip side is it is really scary.
It is.
When you realize there are no answers, right?
Yes.
So when you realize that you can design your life, when you realize you have all these choices, that's actually sometimes more scary than thinking there is a path. So exactly like you said, I think people like safety. Right? They want to feel like there are some rules, which is why we make them.
Right.
It's for people to feel comfortable.
True.
And I think that's the thing, like change is uncomfortable, but you have to embrace the uncomfortableness. Otherwise you will stay stuck.
Yes, you need discomfort in your life every now and then to be able to move forward.
Exactly.
If something's not pricking you, you're not going to get up and move.
Exactly.
So.
And that was a really funny thing. I mean, I think now I've swung the opposite way where I've become really addicted to change, which is also not good. It scares my husband because he's like, at some point, you really have to settle down.
No, I like how that sounded. You're addicted to change and it scares your husband. I hope he's not thinking that, hey, you just don't come and tell me it's time for you to change or it's time for me to make a change.
No, hopefully, no, he's very good about mixing things up. So he keeps things exciting. But that's actually what happened. So when I was in impact investing, I was actually, we were really comfortable. We were happy in London. We were both doing really well. We could easily have stayed there, just continued our careers. And it was because I was so comfortable. I was like, you know what, I want to get up and move to California and do an MBA. And at that point, even, my husband, my family, my in-laws, everyone said, you're so crazy. You have a great life. Like, why are you just disrupting everything, moving to a different country and starting again, right? And it was the same thing. After my MBA, I could easily have just, gone back to impact investing, maybe started my own fund.
Right.
I didn't have to make such a huge transition to being a poet and producer. And again, I think it was, now I have this like sort of voice inside me that's saying, are you pushing yourself enough constantly?
Right. This entire concept of pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Two types of people in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. One who push themselves, motivate themselves, especially because they want to.
Yeah.
And one because life's left no option to them. Okay.
That's true.
I personally feel that it's very nice if you remain in the first half of the category because that's when the struggle, the success, all of that is so much more sweeter.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. When you come from comfortable lifestyles, luxurious lifestyles, comfortable lifestyles, it's very easy to take these things for granted and not really be bothered about what your calling is, what you want to pursue, whether there's any kind of passion or dream in your life that would even interest you. And even if there is, maybe then you will have members of the family pushing that voice down because you already have a path very clear in front of you.
Yeah.
And those and those are the times I feel, Natasha, that people should embrace a conscious struggle.
Absolutely. In fact, I think we should take it one step further, that if you do come from a comfortable lifestyle or you have the privilege of choice, which not everyone does,
right,
then it's even more important that you set a standard, because if you have the chance to then help other people, it's really important that you do that, right? You have to give back in some way. I think that's, again, another really big thing about storytelling for me is one is telling great stories. The second is working with talented creators, right?
Right.
Like in India, you have so many talented writers, directors, actors, editors that are now starting to get the chance to showcase themselves because of the explosion of content. And, I think it's a responsibility to help find that talent and create a good culture for them.
Sure is. Now that you've also been telling us about the whole production aspect, so you've been a creative producer.
Yeah.
What kind of shows have you produced, and would you like to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah,
because we've spoken about storytelling, we've spoken about immunology, we've spoken about your transition. So let's also cover up whatever's left. Yeah. I'm pretty sure this episode will be less for that, but some part of it.
So far I've produced 4 shows.
Great.
I used to be the head of Dice Media, and there I worked on Home Sweet Office, which is basically a show about 2 girls who are trying to set up a business in their home. I worked on another show called Adulting 2, which is basically about 2 girls trying to make it in a big city and just, learning to deal with life.
And adulthood.
Yeah, and adulthood, right? Then the third show was a family show.
Okay.
Which is just about like a take on Modern Family.
Right.
The fourth show is a Netflix original, which will come out in November, so I won't tell you too much about it.
Excellent.
You should definitely watch that.
In Indian cinema, recent times, I'll say, when I saw Dil Dhadakne Do, that film
absolutely
rang a bell.
Absolutely.
It seemed
it's
like
one of my references.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I felt that film actually, we see a lot of international work and, Netflix and Amazon Prime, most of my time goes on those. Right.
Course.
But when I saw Dil Dhadakne Do, it was like you could literally relate to every character in some way and be like, hey, I know this kind of a person in my life.
Exactly.
And more stories like that need to be told.
Yeah, that's 100% the bucket I'm in, which is relatable stories where you can either see yourself or someone else, that in those characters. But I also want that to be a mix of aspirational.
Beautiful.
Because it needs to be, it's not just engaging and fun. Obviously, that fun element has to be there. It's entertainment. But it's also aspirational in some way because you can see there's more ways to live than one.
Utterly true. Utterly true. I can't agree more.
Yeah.
There are so many more ways than to live in one. And there are so many. One thing that a problem gives you. With it is a solution.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people aren't able to see that. That's the reason why they're unable to see the more ways than one that you're talking about. So it'll be nice when you put out some kind of work which allows people to give themselves that kind of an approach. Wonderful.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
Oh, yes. In fact, maybe before your launch, you come back on the show and we'll have a conversation about that.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Because you will have a lot to share in terms of what the show's about and,
Yeah.
what, like you said, the aspirations or the traits, the behavioral patterns of your characters. We can discuss all of that. It'll be interesting. Something I want to know from you, Natasha, is what do you think about dreams and reality? Or dreams versus reality, if I may put it like that. I don't know. I haven't asked this question to anybody on my show as yet. You're the first one. So
Dreams as in you mean like goals for yourself?
maybe. I think when people have a plan, it becomes a goal. When they have no plan, it's a dream.
Interesting. Okay. I think that, actually Gully Boy
All right.
says this really well, right? That you can't have your dreams match your reality. You have to make your reality match your dreams. Right? Because your reality is literally a function of, one, what you were given, and two, what you make of it. So you can't change what you were given, but you can absolutely change what you make of it. Like, it is up to you, and your life gets in the way. Things happen, you, of course, if you fall sick or there's some death or something, that will come in the way of your plans, but you can always get up and try again.
Yes.
So I think you can definitely match your reality and dreams as long as you're willing to start over many times. I think that's the main thing. What you need is resilience.
Right. Being able to persist and having the resilience.
There's definitely going to be a lot of downs.
It's all about downs. It's just peaks and valleys in life. I mean, how else do you see it?
Yeah.
It's like a machine in your ICU. The minute it's a straight line, we're of no use, we're dead.
Yeah.
So it's good if you have those, graphs going up and down.
Yeah.
I also have a little perception about dreams. I feel dreams are effectively achieved when, you start augmenting your reality. When you have your reality in front of you and you start augmenting it, you're giving incremental value to that reality. You can achieve it. It's not that hard. But unfortunately, we want to be stuck. At the same time, we don't want to spend time on the self-awareness or the reflections that we were talking about. And then we also want to complain about life. So that leaves us nowhere. So I guess this is a beautiful way of putting it across, that what you've done so far and where you're planning to be, it really depends on yourself. You said Gully Boy, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking a lot about Zoya.
Zoya Akhtar, yeah. I think she's really insightful. In fact, I just rewatched the pilot of Made in Heaven yesterday, right? And it's exactly what I was saying. Like, she through her characters does that. She shows you there's multiple ways of living.
Yeah. And she also has a way of showing you that we don't live in a black and white world.
Exactly.
It's mostly grey.
Yeah, exactly.
And like your brain, if there's grey matter, your brain is functioning. So well. I mean, I'm not so good at science. You pretty much come from that background. But is what I mean is grey matter is important.
Yeah, of course.
And you're supposed to appreciate and acknowledge it instead of just thinking about, for instance, when you're talking about a person, and recently when I've seen matrimonials and things like that, we're talking about things like, okay, I want a person who's honest, kind, humorous, straightforward, blah, blah, blah. Of course, good looking comes with the Indian marriage proposals. But I don't understand, why are these things not supposed to be an innate part of any normal human being? I mean, if somebody's not honest, they're not going to tell you that.
Exactly.
And aren't we all supposed to generally be kind by default?
Yeah.
Why is there a need to mention these things?
Yeah.
So it's sad that we've always been doing that.
Yeah.
And we should break those stereotypes.
Yeah.
Like, you want a human being.
Yeah.
You grow with that.
Absolutely.
Right? So you've been married. Any tips on a relationship that you would like to give us?
I think, honestly, I've learned so much from my husband. In the last 5 years. It's crazy. I think, so you should ask him for the tips more than me. But in terms of just making a relationship work, I think that, one, you genuinely have to be very happy with yourself before you can make someone else happy. So, take the time, again, to find what makes you tick.
Right.
And two is, I think, you're going to constantly grow and evolve, right? And you just need to ensure that the two of you are growing together and not apart.
Right.
So I think a relationship takes constant realignment. So just make sure that, you are making it fun and also putting in the work to stay realigned.
Yes. You're married 5 years?
Yeah, 5
Sorry,
years.
I'm asking this personally because me too.
Okay, awesome.
And I also feel similar to you.
Yeah.
Not only realigning, I think it's the power to coexist.
Yeah, exactly.
Just the power to coexist.
Yeah.
You live parallel lives, individual lives, and you live an interdependent life.
Absolutely.
If you can do that successfully, it's growth.
Absolutely.
But the minute you're entirely dependent on someone, or you're not dependent at all and you don't care too much, that's when you're missing out,
Exactly.
The links are breaking.
Beautifully. There's a balance, right?
There's a
because
balance.
you definitely, you need and want the other person.
Yes.
But you also have to be happy with yourself.
And you need to appreciate the imperfections.
Yes.
Not the perfections.
Yes.
So going back to the whole perfection conversation. Well, let's come to the last segment of this conversation. Natasha, it's been so wonderful. I think we can go on and on. But I'd like to ask you and end this conversation, in fact, on that note. What is it that empowers you since you're on the Empowering series?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, what empowers me is this realization that there is no path, there is no right answer, and every single one of us is just making it up as we go along, right? We all just have a blank sheet of paper,
right?
And we're drawing what we want. And I think that really is very powerful. And I think the other thing that empowers me is I feel like, I've been very lucky. I've been given some level of opportunity, right? And now I want to help other people, basically.
Right.
I want to give back and make sure that, we are as a community coming together to tell great stories.
Excellent. That's fantastic.
What about you?
Me? A lot of things empower me, but what empowers me the most is, in fact, what you said quite earlier in this conversation. Just the fact that in my profession, I'm in a position to help people maximize their potential in a way. And when you do that, when you see someone just successfully smiling for a day and feeling that they want to be in that moment.
Yeah.
Because they say, I want to change now. But your now can be very long. I don't know what your definition of now is. It can be a moment, can be a day, it can be a month. I don't know what it is. So for me, just the fact that people can someday or some moment of their life realize that, hey, I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm in a good space.
Yeah.
And I can help myself.
Yeah.
And my actions have consequences. When they have that realization at any point in time, I feel extremely empowered.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that leaves me with all my energy and empowerment. And that's where it comes from. So, yes.
That's cool.
Yes. Thank you so much, Natasha. This was a great conversation. And all the very best for the production. I'm going to get my copy of Boundless and read it because, like I said, it was impeccable. Just amazing. Just amazing. So thank you so much. I hope you had a good time. And I'm pretty sure our listeners are going to love this episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. If you liked this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.
Do you have a night routine? Well, everyone has one. And the to-do list usually looks like this. Brush your teeth, set that alarm, get into your pajamas, and switch off those screens. But here's one more to add to that list. Tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast for a dose of positive action and tips on how to build powerful mindsets. Episodes out every Monday on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you tune into podcasts.
Hello everyone, I'm Zain.
I'm Avanti.
And welcome back to a brand new season of Marbles Lost and Found.
A show on mental health and its stigma, and we're kind of making it an open conversation.
Pretty much, yeah. And we're really, really excited about this season because we have a number of guests on and we'll be talking about things like addiction,
grief, children and mental health.
Exactly, children and mental health. And our listeners have also written in this time. Yes,
and we have an episode dedicated to that.
Yes, and guys, thank you so much for writing, and we really, really appreciate it.
And we're really excited for you to tune in on Tuesdays on the IVM website or app or wherever you get your podcasts from.
And you can find Marbles Lost and Found on Facebook, or you can find Marbles Lost and Found on Instagram as well, the handle being Marbles Podcast India.
Can't wait for you to tune in.
Thank you very much. See you guys soon.